for just the 5th time in NCAA history, all number 1 and number 2 seeds advanced to the Sweet 16. Alabama then takes down UNC. Clemson, they knock off Arizona. And Illinois holds on against Iowa State. UConn does what UConn does to advance. But, Chad, here's Alabama and Clemson. And no, it's not Saban against Dabo. And it's for the right to go to each program's first Final Four. The storyline is there, and also the style of play is there that we're seeing in the NBA that everyone tends to hate with no defense. That's exactly what the Crimson Tide are about. And they're doing it in the modern basketball way, and they showed how to do it last night against Carolina.
First off, great game last night. North Carolina and Alabama played.
Yep.
2 offensive-minded teams going head-to-head, hitting shots. Well, let me say this. Hitting shots in the first half. North Carolina took some terrible shots in the second half, and they didn't hit them. They shot 64% in the first half. Not so much in that second one. But Alabama kept it going pretty much throughout. I was very impressed with Grant Nelson watching that game. Hutton, I was reminded of the ghost of white Duke superstars past that probably haunted North Carolina fans in that game, because you watch Grant Nelson and the way he played in that game.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about all of these white Duke players that dominated their ass in the past. And they're probably thinking, oh, here we go again. But now he's wearing an Alabama jersey, some dude from Devil's Lake, North Dakota. I looked it up. That's actually where he's from. Is just dominating with 19 points in the second half. Terrific performance from Grant Nelson. But every time we get into March, we start to look at this, and I've seen it's got to be a team that's in the top 30 of Ken Palm adjusted offense and defense. It's got to have a team that has this metric or that metric. And everyone said about Bama coming into this tournament, and I agreed, not going to get too far because they refuse to play defense. And you don't advance in the NCAA tournament when things get tough, when the gears start cranking against each other and teams are struggling to score. You got to be able to lock down and play good defense if you're going to advance. Alabama plays no defense. They're 104th nationally. Of the teams that are remaining now, going into the Sweet 16 and now with the ones even eliminated last night, they are far and away the worst defensive basketball team left in this tournament. But they've got the 4th best offense. And when you shoot that many threes and you rely on that style of play, if you are hitting, you can beat anyone, including a number 1 seed. And that's exactly what Alabama did last night against North Carolina, a team that started hot, went cold in the second half, and I think a lot of that was poor shot selection. I thought R.J. Davis, unfortunately for him, had one of his worst games as a North Carolina player. But Alabama gets it done, and Hutton, they get to their second ever Elite Eight with a team that does not play defense. They are all offense. Doesn't matter. They get a rematch with Clemson, who went to Tuscaloosa and beat them soundly in the ACC-SEC Challenge way earlier this year. But they get a chance to go to their first ever Final Four, and they're going to be favored to do so.
Yep, and their offense, to your point, threes, layups, or free throw line. That's all they want. There is no mid-range jumper. This is the NBA.
Oh,
they play the NBA system.
That is their game plan, Hutton. I will say last night, Aaron Estrada, they allowed to take mid-range shots.
Yep.
And he drained a bunch of big ones for them. But, yeah, he's the only guy allowed to take a mid-range jumper on the team. That they'll even that's the only guy they'll consider the option of shooting from mid-range. And he was really good last night.
So you mentioned Estrada. Think about how this Alabama team has been built. And it's through Nate Oates, who is a Midwestern guy who was coaching at Buffalo.
Watertown, Wisconsin.
Who beat Arizona in the tournament, where Greg Byrne certainly was paying close attention to that because he came from Arizona to Alabama. And he's kind of outside the box in terms of fitting in. He's replacing Avery Johnson, who speaks the Tuscaloosa language, let's say, right? It reminds me, by the way, of their football hire in a way that Greg Byrne just made. But they have Estrada, who's a transfer from Hofstra. They have Sears, who's from Ohio U. And then, of course, Grant Nelson from North Dakota State. And the storyline they don't have is Brandon Miller. If you rewind 12 months ago, if this Alabama team were the 2023 version, this would have a totally different perspective and narrative to how they made it to the Elite Eight with the chance to go to the Final Four. Of course, San Diego State knocked them out of that opportunity last year, and that storyline disappeared. But we're seeing a similar type of storyline with Illinois that will play itself out if Illinois makes it to the Final Four. But with Brandon Miller aside, now this is a Nate Oates team that plays an exciting style of basketball. And it's a bunch of guys who came through the portal that end up in Tuscaloosa and have the chance to take the team to its first Final Four and national platform. And it's a team that will go potentially, they've got to get past Clemson, which they didn't do in the regular season, will go to the national stage and represent the university in a bright light, quite frankly. I like watching this team play. And it's a hit or miss type team. If they don't hit their shots, they are done. We saw that firsthand in Knoxville with Clay. They're done because they don't play D. But Chad, instead of being the focus of off the court issues and what Nate Oates is saying about how he's handling team discipline, which was awful a year ago, now it's about how he has coached this team to fit this style, how Greg Byrne has hired this guy who inherited a group of players that Avery Johnson did not make the most out of. I mean, he inherited a player like John Petty comes to mind, and he coached them up. And this is a group now that has a chance to do more in this tournament that is top-heavy than I ever expected. I had them out early. I had them out first round. I had them losing because they don't play defense. But this is the modern style of basketball. The teams that won score the rock. And, you know, it's Iowa State, Virginia. I mean, the list is small on the teams that go through defense first. And it's tough to be the national champion, or it's tough to be a Final Four program doing that. This is a Bama team that is doing the opposite and showing you that, well, while it's not the complete form of maybe the entire type of basketball I want to watch, it's a very exciting one that I want to follow.
Yeah, I think Nate Oates is a terrific basketball coach. He showed that at Romulus High School to Buffalo to Alabama. He's had success everywhere he's been. I don't think anyone's rooting for Nate Oates outside of Alabama fans, quite frankly. I think he handled the Brandon Miller situation a year ago terribly. And they got what they deserved in losing. They should have lost in the first round if justice were to be served, right, honestly, in that season. This team is more likable in that there wasn't the murder of a young mother perpetrated by someone or around this team this year. But they have their issues too. You know, they got guys who were suspended by the SEC or guys that everyone's saying, hey, Nate Oates should probably step in and do something from a disciplinary perspective, and he didn't. So I don't have a ton of love for Nate Oates from that perspective. But you can't deny the results. I mean, he is one of the 10 best coaches in college basketball, just given the results of what he does. And
doing it at a program where it's almost the oil and water.
Yeah, very similar to a team we'll see tonight in Tennessee from a historical perspective. They've been to one Elite Eight before. This in 2004, they beat Syracuse, got to the Elite Eight. I think they lost to UConn that year in the 2004 Elite Eight, who I believe went on to win it all.
Win the title.
This year, they get a 6 seed in Clemson. They're going to be favored to go to the Final Four. So he's done something that's only been done once in Alabama history. Terrific coach. They're going to have results. Alabama fans should be happy with the on-court results. I don't know that there's a ton that I would be thrilled with the program outside of that the last couple of years. But, I mean, Alabama fans should be excited about this run to the Elite Eight. And rightfully so. I am curious, though, now that we're down to the Elite Eight, and I thought this about North Carolina, too. Alabama is the 4th best team offensively in America. The top 3 are still playing. UConn, Illinois, and Purdue. The difference is UConn is one of the top 5 defensive teams in America, too. Illinois is not good on defense, but they're still, I think, 40 spots better nationally than Alabama. Purdue is top 10 defensively. The teams that are left now, for the most part, are pretty balanced. I think Creighton is an exception, where they are the best three-point shooting team in America and great on offense, not always great defensively. I think Alabama is an exception. But here is what can be the beauty of coaching a style this way. If you're going to take three-pointers and shots at the rim and play fast, and you got guys who are skilled in playing that style, you are a hot shooting performance away each time. And this is not it's going to continue through the tournament, and can you piece this many? You reset. It is a chalkboard. You write the chalk out. Here's the lesson plan for this game. Here's what happened. Here's everything. Okay, now we're going to erase it, and we're starting over again. And if you can do it again, you can win a national title doing this. That's what fascinates me about Nate Oates' style in Alabama this year is they beat North Carolina last night playing it. They should beat Clemson. They should get to their first ever Final Four. And it has me asking the question, why not? Why not Alabama? If this was a game played on paper and through metrics, they don't have a chance against the teams they could see in the Final Four, namely UConn, Illinois, Purdue, teams I've mentioned already, right? They're not as good as them because they're in the 100s defensively. But every game is its new story. And if you play that way and hit shots, then maybe, just maybe, they can make it happen. I did not see the Grant Nelson performance coming.
No, but
that was a remarkable second-half performance.
And on the defensive end. He had some blocked shots. Who knew? That's the one anomaly to the performance.
Well, and Armando Bacot misses a dunk, in the last 2 or 3 minutes.
Terrible shot selection late.
Yes, there was one awful shot late in the game. But North Carolina helped, I think, in that game. But Alabama, full marks to them. They have gotten to their second ever Elite Eight as a program, not playing defense. They don't value it. They don't play it with this team because of their style, and here they are in the Elite Eight.
Now, and here's Clemson as well. And, Chad, Clemson, I would love to be behind the scenes because you have the scout going on both, on any of your possible outcomes. If you make it past, the Sweet 16, you're scouting both opponents, Alabama or Carolina. But I wonder what today is like for Clemson. It's not like they were the 2 seed. They were the 6 seed facing Arizona. And the amount of time and effort that went into facing Arizona and beating them, and now the 24-hour turnaround of trying to keep up with Alabama. What's that like on the scout? Now, they have the familiarity. They know that they've faced them and they've beat them. But just the quick change and it's got to be a physical drain playing the Wildcats. It has to be. And Clemson did its part. They answered that they made Arizona answer, and then they answered again. They answered back. But I don't want to doubt them, but I do think Bama beats them. What do you think?
I think so too. I think it's funny too, seeing all the jokes on Twitter last night immediately about
football.
The comparison of football with Clemson and Alabama meeting for a chance to go to the national semifinal, a game we've seen a lot in college football. Yeah, I think Alabama should win the game. Clemson's an interesting team, though, that how they've had to get this done, beating Baylor and then a 3 seed, then beating Arizona, a team I had in my bracket in the national championship game. Tommy Lloyd has some explaining to do also. That's a guy right now who is not doing well in the NCAA tournament.
When's the last time they've been to the final?
That's a good question. It's been a while. They lost last year to Princeton as a 2 seed. And they really kind of no-showed last night against Clemson. It was 16-6 in no time. And they made their runs.
But
they
Clemson
took a
made
lead
some
for a
threes
short
late.
time.
It was fun.
It was a good game. But, that's a game that Arizona team with Caleb Love needs to win. And not getting it done, that's not a good look for Tommy Lloyd.
And everyone wanted to see, I see everyone, 90% of the audience wanted to see Arizona against Carolina because of Caleb Love.
Yeah, I don't think the common sports fan cares at all about Alabama and Clemson basketball.
No.
That's a very – I don't. I just don't think there's any good – I mean, Brad Brownell's a good coach, well-respected in the coaching community. Is there a single story to really latch onto nationally with these two teams?
No, it would be Brandon Miller.
Yeah,
if it
a year
were,
ago would have been that.
Yeah. No, but there's not. There's not. But one of the coaches and one of the, a handful of these star players will take the national stage where everyone will be talking about them on Monday. One won't. But that's the platform they're on, and it's just a complete 180 of how we would view the Crimson Tide basketball program. In a way, they're fortunate to have San Diego State make the Final Four run last year, I think.
I think, though, with Alabama, I look at their game and their win over North Carolina. I think that was more about Alabama playing well and winning a huge game.
But
I look at Arizona Clemson. I'm sorry, Clemson fans. I know this is going to sound disrespectful. I think it was way more about what Arizona didn't do in that game and what they could not accomplish.
Arizona went 5 for 20, I think, from 3.
I think it was way more about Arizona's failures than Clemson's excellence. I think the Alabama win was more about Alabama played a style they played all year, and they played it well enough to beat a number 1 seed.
Last time, going back to Arizona, last time in the championship was 2001. That's also the last Final Four appearance. I view them in a totally different light than that.
Yeah.
I would have said, I don't know, a handful of years ago.
Lute Olson ain't walking through that door anytime soon. That's the lesson.
And how long was this? Year 5, I think.
For Tommy Lloyd?
Yeah. Is it year 3?
I think 3.
Year 3. Thank you, Davey.
3 or 4, yeah.
3 or 4. So, I mean, he's got – is it hot seat time next year?
No, because they're going to continue to win. I mean, it's not hot seat because they're such a high seed every year, but he needs to do something in the tournament.
Yeah, but that's where – so Calipari, for instance, they're bringing him back. Think about this. What if the Wildcats go to – what if Kentucky goes to the Sweet 16 and they fall to a team like Clemson? Is he out?
That's a good question.
Just by bringing him back, if he wins 2 games,
well,
it's
Arizona's
Kentucky.
not Kentucky.
No. But we have seen.
I know what you're saying, but I mean Arizona from an expectation standpoint, it's not the rabid fan base.
I'm fascinated by what's good enough.
It's a good historic program that Lute Olson made into a terrific program, and they should win. But given the talent that Tommy Lloyd's had, he needs to do better. Again, I just look at it as Arizona failed in that game. I thought Alabama succeeded in theirs.
And then that
was a big difference in my approach to watching both games back and forth. It felt like Arizona let it get away and didn't play the way they should.
Yeah.
And with Alabama, it felt more like, Alabama played their style and won playing that style against a North Carolina team that wants to get up and down the court and shoot a lot of threes.
And credit to Clemson for showing up, and being consistent. Let's also mention a good coaching storyline with Brad Brownell. So Brownell, he is last year. It's tournament or pink slip is what he's told. He's told directly from his AD this, and he didn't receive the pink slip because of what he had coming back and some of the momentum that they had. And what a decision to bring him back, and now you're in the Elite Eight with a chance to go to your school's first Final Four. When he was told directly, make the tournament or peace. And they bring him back for year 14. Anyway, that's rare.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a 6 seed. It's good, not great. It's not like they set the world on fire with everything he had coming back, but it's another classic example of you can change the entire complexion of how you're remembered by how you perform in March. And all Clemson fans will ever remember about this team is Elite Eight run, beating 3-seed Baylor, beating 2-seed Arizona, and playing another football powerhouse, Alabama, for an Elite Eight. So you can completely change the perception one way or the other. It's a new start. It's a fresh start for everyone. And Alabama's showing that also. And Alabama's doing it basically the same way they did all season. Not playing defense and hitting threes and getting to the rim. That's how they're making it happen.
Illinois is making it happen with the best player in the tournament right now, in Terrance Shannon Jr. It's not Zach Edey. It's Terrance Shannon Jr.
Has there been a single mention about him being charged with sexual battery?
No.
I'm curious about that. Not a single broadcaster has made a mention of it.
Let me be fair to that answer. I don't see it much in the headlines other than the local outlets that are covering this team on a regular basis.
Or what I've noticed last night, because I actually Google searched it to see who's writing about it, it's the teams he plays. So the Des Moines Register had a story about, here's the timeline of Terrance Shannon Jr., Iowa State's opponent, coming up in the Sweet 16.
He's the third highest
So it's really their opponents talking about it.
He is putting up like 30 points a game in the tournament. I mean, he's been excellent. And he's the best player that will be playing in the Elite Eight, I think. Just overall, just best player playing right now. And, you know, he's a polarizing story that will be representing the Illinois team. Regardless of how you view how it was handled, from the suspension to the charges to anything. You know, he has the judge step in, and now he's back and he's playing, and he's the reason why Illinois is where they are.
He makes stuff happen.
He does
with regularity. He comes into the game with foul trouble. He was on the bench for a while in the second
fouls.
half. Comes in, he nails a corner three immediately.
Right as Iowa State cut it to, a 5-point game?
I think it was the first touch. It was a 2 or 3 point game. And the first touch, when he comes back in, he buries a corner three to put them up 5, I believe, at the time. They're down 4, and he gets basically the pick 6 of basketball, right? Just makes it happen, goes down, steals it, goes the other way, dunks it. Incredible player. Crazy story. With Illinois, not playing him, and then they file a lawsuit saying, or an injunction, he should be playing. They reinstate him to school, so Brad Underwood plays him. I don't blame him. If he's going to be in school, might as well play your best player. And just the decisions of how different broadcast entities decide to cover a story, I don't think there's been a single mention of it. There was with Brandon Miller a year ago. I think that even in the NCAA tournament, they mentioned it occasionally. They haven't mentioned it at all with Terrance Shannon. I'm not saying that's the right or wrong decision.
And here's the other thing too.
I would probably avoid it too.
Brandon Miller.
If I'm Turner and CBS, but I know they've mentioned it all.
There is a big difference between the two situations. Brandon Miller was actually available to the media. He was talking about basketball.
Yeah.
Post game. Terrance Shannon has not talked one bit at all because of his legal team and their advice. And right, whatever. Follow your legal advice. Don't say anything. So he's not available to the press at all throughout this run. Silence. I think that's also a big difference. And after a while, there are other storylines through a tournament that you end up quoting,
Yeah.
And you don't have him available, and he's the best player on the floor in this tournament right now.
Illinois' got a shot to win it all.
They do.
They have the second best offense in America after last night, and Terrance Shannon Jr. is a star.
How do you think?
Star college player. They could win it all.
UConn has won their last 9 tournament games
UConn's incredible.
At least 13 points. What do you think the final spread is for UConn, Illinois?
I just want to see UConn get tested. I mean, forget losing. I'd like to see them win by less than 10 in a game. I mean, this is one of the best runs we've ever seen in NCAA tournament history. They averaged 20 points per game, the winning margin a year ago. We said it yesterday, 28 points per game coming into last night. They beat San Diego State by 30. The defending national runner-up with Ledee, who is a legitimate college star, they beat them by 30 last night, and they make it look pedestrian.
Right now, it's 8.5 is the spread.
I'll
take UConn.
Yes.
Take UConn.
Let's see them tested one time.
Bama favored by 2.5 over Clemson.
That's going to be a good game.
Creighton and Tennessee tonight. It's the nightcap. We have North Carolina State, NC State, and Marquette that will tip things off this evening, followed by Purdue and Gonzaga, and Duke and Houston as the prelude to Tennessee and Creighton, which I think is the best matchup of the Sweet 16.
I think Gonzaga-Purdue could be pretty good. That's a there's some really good, chalky, high-profile games tonight. Creighton, Tennessee, definitely one of them. With, I think, last I checked, Tennessee favored by 3.5 going into that game.
It's still 3.5.
One thing to watch is Kim English, who is a former Rick Barnes assistant, at Tennessee, is now the head coach at Providence. Providence was one of the few teams that had a lot of success against Creighton this year.
Okay.
They were 2-0 against
I like
them.
where you go with this.
They beat them, and they beat them again in the Big East tournament. I think that Rick Barnes and company have been talking a lot with Kim English about how to defend Creighton. And Rick Barnes said something very interesting this week about Creighton. When asked to describe their style and what they do, he said it's pretty much the same as Alabama. No mid-range. It's going to be all threes and all getting the ball to the basket and getting shots at the rim, especially with Kalkbrenner. The difference is they got a legit 7-footer down low that Alabama doesn't have that big low post presence the way Creighton does. But keep in mind, Tennessee was 2-0 against Alabama. Kim English, Rick Barnes' protege, 2-0 against Creighton while at Providence in the Big East. Does that bode well for Tennessee's defensive ability to stymie Creighton? I think so. But as we saw last night, it's the NCAA tournament. And what we think is going to happen or what should happen, exactly. Just play that theme over all of it. Every prediction we could make, we don't know till we get in the game. And that's the beauty of it, because I believe Tennessee might roll in this game tonight. I really do. I think they avoided their awful offensive performance, and they're going to be better on offense tonight, and they have the horses to defend Creighton. Is that going to stop Creighton from, chucking shots from 5 feet behind the three-point line and hitting them with regularity? Might happen. That's why we watch the games.
We are watching the Ohtani storyline play out, Chad, with Major League Baseball underway. We'll get into this some with Michael McHenry in about 15 minutes. Rob Manfred, MLB commissioner, he wants this investigation by Major League Baseball into all of this betting scandal and the investigation that's going on federally and by the IRS into Masuhara, the interpreter for Ohtani, and looking into the illegal bookmaker that is connected to Ohtani's bank account. Rob Manfred says we want this to play out fast or at least in a decent time frame, because we want to show our fans that, well, we mean business when it comes to the integrity of baseball. I get all that. Here, and I understand why he wants to do that. Chad has laid out this week, it shouldn't be that difficult to prove one way or the other. I agree. But you have the authority of law enforcement involved with this. You have the feds and you have the IRS, and they're not going to necessarily automatically cooperate with Major League Baseball's investigation that's going on about Ohtani. They've got bigger fish to fry. And they're not going to jeopardize that over whether or not some player bet on sports. They're looking into the hierarchy of how that money was funneled to the person they're after, and then anything above that. So I understand wanting to speed this process up. Chad, MLB, if they try to come out and say one way or the other that this did not, this happened, this did not happen. If they're too fast, that goes against them. If it takes too long, it goes against them. I don't know what the sweet spot is to actually dive in and spend enough time to make sure you get it right. They've got to get it right. They have to have the evidence present if they truly mean the integrity matters. And they also should take their time to see what progresses from the legal aspect of this, simply because the legal aspect can include theft, but yet no one's investigating that yet. At least no one's confirming they are, or that Ohtani's crew has even turned things over to authorities for those allegations of theft for $4.5 million. You can't just speed things up because you want to, although I wish they could.
Yeah, it's not a legitimate investigation. I want to put that out there right now. It's not, because when you have a predetermined outcome in mind, it's not a legitimate investigation. An investigation is you go in open-minded with all possibilities laid out before you. Think of Kerry from Homeland, putting everything out there on the board and saying, okay, here's how we connect this, here's how we do that, here's what we're going to find out. But you can't go in wanting to know something and wanting to have a specific outcome. Major League Baseball, 1,000,000% wants the outcome to be Shohei Ohtani did not bet on baseball, did not know about his interpreter doing this, had no knowledge of any bet he made on baseball, and did not affect the integrity of Major League Baseball in any way.
Or did not wire money to an illegal bookmaker, which is also against MLB policy.
Right. But baseline on this, like you could, again, when that first came out, I'm thinking, yeah, you could explain that away. He's trying to help out his buddy. Mm-hmm. Now, there could be legal implications that he would pay a fine, or I don't know if there's jail time involved or whatever for having done that. But that was a believable story that would vindicate Ohtani and not make Major League Baseball look bad. Baseball wants the outcome to be he did not bet on the game, he did not affect the integrity of the game. Anything else to them is unacceptable. So when you start an investigation with that in mind, and you're going to everyone and saying, I'm Rob Manfred, let's make this quick, and let's make this where Ohtani is innocent, because he holds the future of our sport right now. This is a big part of what we are internationally and what we want to be. And he just signed a $700 million contract with one of the banner franchises in our league. Let's get him cleared of this mess and get on with the season. That's what Major League Baseball wants. So it's not a legitimate investigation if that's the case, because we know that's what they want in this. This is where you need third-party people investigating. Oh, third-party people like, I don't know, the feds that are investigating the illegal bookmaker. They should be able to find out what happened in all this. And if Ohtani is legitimately the victim of theft, they would turn it over to those third-party investigators, and they would give them the evidence of what Mizuhara did to steal from him, and we'd have an outcome there to show that, in fact, he was stolen from.
Well, and that's part of, I mean, that's up to Ohtani's crew, not Major League Baseball.
Yes.
You know, so they're at the mercy of.
And that's why I'm very skeptical and cynical of all of this, because they haven't turned over any information.
Well, and also, I mean, do you hire a crisis management team if you're Ohtani and if you don't have something to hide? If you don't have a crisis to manage?
Well, he should have hired that team before they issued the statements.
Well, one of the newly hired people involved in that is one of the statements where he said, yes, he wired the money. One of the newly hired members of the crisis management team.
But if that was the story.
I know. But then they
like the initial story from Mizuhara to ESPN, I'm thinking.
Well, you can't say that, though. You know, if that's the story, you can't go with it because there's something there, and at minimum, he would be wiring money from his account knowingly on his own to an illegal bookmaker that's under investigation by the feds.
Yes, and I would like to know from a lawyer, okay, if I'm admitting to this, what is my legal liability?
But I think it's more about baseball.
What fine is it? Is it jail time? What is it?
I don't think it's that. I think it's more about the perception of what's going to happen with him from baseball.
Baseball wants to believe Ohtani.
But it's totally against. He would be admitting, if you're going to believe Ohtani, he would be admitting.
I believed him.
He would be admitting to breaking Major League Baseball gambling policy by doing that.
Yeah,
you cannot do that.
And I would have believed him. And I think Major League Baseball would have forgiven him and believed him. I think that was the most believable story. I think what's happening now makes him look more guilty.
But he would still be suspended for. I mean, based on what it's up to it's commissioner's discretion. But I mean, are we talking about a year for Ohtani, and then he comes back and you have that going too? And again, it's Ohtani coming off of the contract, $700 million deferred. You have the IRS looking into this. I think this also plays a factor. He would be admitting to sending that money on behalf of someone with an illegal bookmaker, and you can't claim theft if you willingly wire the money.
Yeah.
Which is what they turned around and did.
Also, I don't think you should be able to claim theft if you don't report it to the authorities.
Well,
that to me is fascinating. They won't
confirm that they have or they have not, and neither will the authorities.
And what is it? Tisha Thompson, the woman working on this for ESPN, she goes to every single law enforcement agency that they would report it to, and they have no record of it.
Or the IRS won't confirm it.
Yeah, they have.
The other flip side of it. They either have not, they will not say one way or the other, or they say no.
Well, look, I'm saying if if the honest story was he's helping out a buddy, he paid the bookmaker, it was a mistake, by him, but he did it because that's what his interpreter friend said. He's naive. He doesn't really know what's going on. If I turn that over to Major League Baseball, knowing they want me to be okay and play, I think a 25-game suspension for making that mistake, I don't think people in baseball around the game would have had a problem with that.
They're suspending for taking roids right now. What are you? It's a 80? Is it 50 game?
But again, go back to what they want the outcome to be. They hate people who take roids. They love Shohei Ohtani.
Right, but they would have Ohtani admitting to it instead of the investigation that they have, where they can find out whatever they want to find out. They can control whatever the result is. They would have Ohtani admitting to be wiring $4.5 million to an illegal bookmaker in the state of California that's being investigated by the feds and where the IRS is looking into it.
And I could have easily made him a victim in all this by his interpreter because he doesn't know the language. He's in the United States.
He's doing it on behalf of his interpreter who speaks his language.
This guy's a degenerate gambler, and I helped my buddy out, and I sent it to the illegal bookmaker. I'm sorry. I'll take a 25, 30-game suspension, whatever it is. And I think baseball would have gone along with that. Why? Because baseball wants Shohei Ohtani to not be banned for life. And now instead they're in a situation where they're claiming theft, and not a single person in Ohtani's camp will go to the authorities with evidence of theft. So if I'm baseball now, I'm thinking, show us where he had your bank records.
Well,
show us where he did this. Show us how he got to your money. If you can't, I'm banning your ass for life. So now it's a much worse situation to me.
Well, you're banning him for life if he bet on baseball, not if he bet on other sports.
If you're lying about the dude stealing from you and you're not reporting it to the authorities, that's also bad.
But you also have the dude, the translator, who is admitting, and he's recanting what he said, and he's now saying, no, he didn't know until I told him. And that's what Ohtani's saying, until I was told in South Korea. He didn't know what the money was for.
Well, look, this could all be explained away.
I don't believe that, by the way.
If they show how he stole from him, fine. Ohtani's fine. Continue with the investigation with the feds.
Well, what we know is that the legal side of things, the lawyers are the ones that step in and they say, no, make sure we recant that. We're going to release a statement on it. It's those that are hired to speak on behalf of him that have totally screwed all of this information up.